I saved her for 5 years, then learned I was only protecting the man she truly loved. For 5 years, I built my entire life around Lena. Ashford's recovery. I learned the names of her medications, memorized the signs of an approaching panic attack, and trained myself to wake at the slightest movement beside me. When nightmares dragged her from sleep, I held her until morning. When she could not bear crowded rooms, I cancelled birthdays, holidays, and family dinners. When she became convinced that everyone would eventually abandon her, I promised that I would not. Once, during the worst period of her illness, I tried to take a broken glass from her hand. She pushed me away in panic, and my arm struck the sharp edge of a cabinet. The scar still ran from my wrist toward my elbow. Whenever she saw it, Lena would touch it gently and whisper the same promise. "Evan, when I'm well again, we'll get married." I believed her every time. After 5 years of treatment, therapy, and slow progress, her doctor finally told us that Lena was stable enough to return to a normal life. I cried in the hospital parking lot, not because I was sad, because I believed the hardest part of our story was finally over. I spent the next month planning our wedding. I booked a small historic chapel overlooking the Hudson River. I contacted the restaurant where we had shared our first real date. I even found a string quartet willing to play the song Lena used to hum when she was frightened. On the afternoon I planned to show her everything. I arrived at our family's Manhattan townhouse carrying a leather folder filled with photographs, menus, and venue details. The front door was open. Lena was in the garden with her closest friend, Sophie. I was about to call her name when I heard Sophie ask a question that stopped me in the hallway. "You've always loved Oliver," she said. "So why did you keep Evan beside you for 5 years?" Oliver Grant, Lena's childhood friend, her first love, the man who had asked her out repeatedly before her breakdown, only to be rejected every time. I had always believed she rejected him because she loved me. A long silence followed. Then Lena answered, "When I was ill, I couldn't control what I said or did. I was terrified all the time. I broke things. I screamed at people. Sometimes I didn't recognize myself." Her voice softened. "How could I let Oliver see me like that?" My fingers tightened around the wedding folder. Inside it were the plans for the wedding I had postponed my entire life to give her. Lena continued speaking. "Oliver was the one person I wanted to protect from the worst parts of me." Sophie lowered her voice. "That sounds as though you used Evan as a shield. I didn't force him to stay. He believed you loved him. I do care about him." "That isn't what I asked." Another silence. Then Lena said the words that ended everything. "Evan saved me. Oliver is the man I never wanted to lose." I looked down at the scar on my arm. 5 years of sleepless nights. 5 years away from my parents. 5 years of cancelled dreams. I had believed I was helping the woman I loved survive. In reality, I had been standing between her illness and the man she considered too precious to suffer beside her. I did not enter the garden. I did not confront her. I placed the wedding folder in the rubbish bin outside the townhouse, booked the first flight home to Seattle, and went directly to the airport. Lena called while I was sitting near the departure gate. "Evan, where are you?" Her voice was calm, but I could hear the familiar unease beneath it. "I'm at the airport." She gave a small laugh. "You're going home to collect the family documents, aren't you? You could have waited until after the ceremony. We don't need to rush the legal paperwork." My parents had opposed our marriage for years, not because they hated Lena. They were afraid I had disappeared inside her recovery. Earlier that year, they had finally agreed to accept the wedding. Lena assumed I was flying home to collect the documents we needed. She still believed the ceremony was coming. She still believed I knew nothing. "When will you be back?" she asked. An announcement echoed through the terminal. Passengers for Seattle were being invited to board. Lena heard it. Her breathing changed. "Evan." I stood and lifted my bag. Lena, we're finished. The line went silent. What? There won't be a wedding. Stop being ridiculous. I'm not. You spent 5 years waiting for this. I spent 5 years waiting for a woman who never existed. Her voice became colder. Did someone say something to you? Yes, who? It doesn't matter. Evan, come home. You mean come back to you? Isn't that the same thing? Once, it had been. That was the problem. No, I said. Not anymore. I ended the call and blocked her number before boarding the plane. For the first time in 5 years, when Lena said she needed me, I did not turn around. My mother cried when she opened the front door. Not politely, not quietly. She pulled me into her arms and held me as though I had returned from a war and no one else knew I had been fighting. You're so thin, she whispered. My father stood behind her, one hand gripping the door frame. He had never forgiven me for missing Christmas 3 years in a row. But when he saw me, he did not lecture me. He only said, I made the ribs you like. At dinner, my mother kept putting food onto my plate. My father waited until halfway through the meal before asking, where is Lena? We broke up. His fork stopped. My mother looked at me carefully. Neither of them celebrated. They knew I had loved her. They also knew that whatever brought me home had already hurt me enough. My father cleared his throat. We spoke to a specialist last month. I looked up. About what? About Lena's condition. My mother rested her hand over mine. We wanted to understand what marriage might look like. The doctor said recovery can be complicated and that she might need support for many years. My father looked embarrassed. We were going to sell this house. I stared at him. What if you married her? He said. We planned to move to New York. We thought you might need help. The people I had accused of not understanding my love had been preparing to give up their home, so I would not carry everything alone. I lowered my head. I'm sorry. My mother squeezed my fingers. You came home, that's enough. That night, I slept for nearly 12 hours. It was the longest I had slept in years. I had left university with a degree in environmental engineering, but Lena's illness had changed the direction of my life. During those 5 years, I completed courses in crisis support, medication management and private home care. I needed the knowledge because her family rarely stayed long enough to learn it. Those qualifications helped me find work quickly. My first client was Margaret Blake, a wealthy 78-year-old widow recovering from major heart surgery. Margaret lived in a beautiful house overlooking Lake Washington. She had silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the unnerving habit of recognizing lies before they were spoken. On my first day, she looked at the scar on my arm. Former patient, she asked. Former girlfriend. That sounds expensive. It was. She nodded approvingly. At least you learned something. Margaret was demanding but kind. She hated hospital food, loved old French films, and refused to admit when she was tired. Within a month, we developed an easy routine. I prepared her medication. She criticized my clothes. I took her for walks. She attempted to arrange my marriage. My granddaughter is single, she announced one afternoon while I was checking her blood pressure. That sounds like her private business. She works too much. A tragic condition. She's 31. I'll alert the authorities. Margaret pulled her arm away from the monitor. You're mocking me. Only with respect. She narrowed her eyes. Then she laughed. It was the first time I saw her do it. A week later, Lena's mother called. I almost ignored the unfamiliar number. Then I answered. Evan, when are you returning to New York? Victoria Ashford did not greet me. She rarely had. Why would I return? Lena's follow-up examination didn't go well. Her doctor wants to admit her for observation. I'm sorry to hear that. I've already asked my assistant to find you a flight. I looked through Margaret's window at the lake. Cancel it. Victoria seemed not to understand. What? Lena and I are no longer together. I know you had an argument. It wasn't an argument. She depends on you. She has a family. No one understands her the way you do. That is not my responsibility anymore. Victoria's voice sharpened. You cannot simply care for someone for 5 years and then disappear. Do you want something to happen to her? The guilt was familiar. Her family had used it for years. Every holiday I missed had begun with the same warning. What if Lena needs you? Every dream I postponed had been justified by the same question. How can you leave her now? I did not cause Lena's illness, I said, and I cannot be the condition of her recovery. You're being cruel. No, I'm finally setting a boundary. You knew she was unwell when you started dating her. I didn't know she was in love with Oliver. The silence on the other end told me Victoria already knew. You all knew, I said. That situation was complicated. You allowed me to sacrifice 5 years because it was convenient. We were grateful, you were comfortable. She tried to interrupt. I ended the call. Margaret had heard enough from the next room. When I returned, she held out a cup of tea. You should charge them retroactively, she said. For what? 5 years of professional care. I laughed. She did not. I'm serious. Margaret's granddaughter arrived. The following Monday, I walked into the bedroom and found a tall woman standing beside the window in a charcoal coat. Her dark hair was tied loosely behind her neck. Her posture was elegant, almost severe, and she carried herself like someone who entered rooms, expecting decisions to be made. Margaret smiled too innocently. Evan, this is my granddaughter, Vivian. Vivian Blake turned. She was beautiful in a way that made the room feel suddenly smaller, not warm, not immediately approachable, but impossible to ignore. I've heard a great deal about you, she said. That is worrying. Margaret gestured between us. Vivian runs Blake Horizons. I knew the company. It develops sustainable resorts, hospitals and residential projects across the United States and Europe. Vivian looked at her grandmother. You told me you were seriously ill. I was lonely. You said you couldn't stop vomiting. I was emotionally vomiting. Vivian closed her eyes. Grandmother. Margaret pointed at me. Evan bought me lemon cake. That explains the emergency. I wanted you to meet him before another woman did. I nearly dropped the blood pressure monitor. Vivian's expression barely changed, but the tips of her ears turned pink. I apologize, she said to me. She has no respect for boundaries. Margaret smiled. Neither do successful grandmothers. Vivian drove me home that evening because Margaret insisted. The journey began in silence. Vivian watched the road. I watched the rain. Finally, she asked, You used to work in New York? Yes. What brought you back? A delayed sense of self-respect. Her mouth curved faintly. Before I could ask anything about her, Vivian looked into the rearview mirror. Her expression changed. Someone is following us. A black SUV had remained behind us through 4 turns. Vivian changed lanes. The SUV followed. She accelerated. So did the other driver. My hands tightened around the seat belt. Should I call the police? Yes. Before I could finish the call, the SUV struck the back of our car. The impact was not strong enough to cause serious injury, but it pushed us toward the shoulder. Vivian controlled the vehicle and stopped, safely. The SUV stopped behind us. The driver's door opened. Lena stepped out. For a moment, I could not move. She looked thinner than before. Her hair was uncombed, and there were shadows beneath her eyes. Vivian stepped between us before Lena came close. Police arrived within minutes. Because no one was seriously hurt, the incident was treated as reckless driving and property damage. Lena's doctor was contacted, and her family was required to collect her. She barely looked at the officers. Her eyes remained fixed on me. Evan, she whispered, I miss you. Once. Those 3 words could make me abandon anything. I would leave meetings, cross cities, drive through storms. Now I only felt tired. Lena glanced at Vivian. Who is she? My employer's granddaughter. Vivian looked at me. That is technically accurate. Lena's expression softened with relief. Then come home. I am home. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. That's why the answer is no. Her face crumpled. You really don't want me anymore. The question came from the same frightened place that had controlled me 4 years. But compassion was not the same as obligation. I want you to get help, I said. I do not want to be your partner. She stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. Vivian gave her insurance information to the police and guided me back toward the car. Before opening my door, she said quietly, her condition deserves proper treatment. It does not give her permission to endanger you. That sentence stayed with me. 4 years, everyone around Lena had treated her diagnosis as an explanation for every choice. Sometimes it explained her fear. It did not explain the lie. It did not excuse her family's manipulation. And it did not require me to surrender my life. 2 days later, Lena asked to meet me at a public cafe. Vivian disliked the idea. Margaret disliked it more. My mother threatened to come with me, but I agreed because I wanted to end the story without leaving another opening for Lena to enter. She was already seated when I arrived. For several minutes, she said nothing. Then she looked at the scar on my arm. Do you think I'm a burden? No, she appeared surprised. I think you are a person responsible for the choices you make when you are capable of making them. Her fingers trembled around the coffee cup. I know I depended on you too much. You did. I know it wasn't fair. It wasn't. But you understood me. I understood the version of you that you allowed me to see. Her eyes filled. I was afraid. Of what? Of Oliver seeing me at my worst. There it was, the truth between us. You were willing to let me see it. You were stronger. No, Lena. You believed I was easier to lose. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I heard everything you said to Sophie. I continued. You kept Oliver away because you loved him too much to let him suffer. You kept me close because my suffering was acceptable. That isn't what I meant. It is what you did. She shook her head. I loved you. You needed me. Is there a difference? Yes. The answer seemed to frighten her. She reached into her handbag and removed a red velvet box. Inside was an antique diamond ring. I recognized it. The Ashford family engagement ring. The one Lena's grandmother had worn. I was going to give this to you, she said. I planned everything. You planned to marry me while loving someone else. I thought marriage would prove that you mattered. Love should have done that. She slid from her chair and dropped to one knee beside the table. Every conversation around her stopped. Evan, she said, tears spilling down her face, marry me. I looked at the woman for whom I had nearly disappeared once. That moment would have been the answer to every prayer I had whispered into the darkness. Now it only felt like proof that she had arrived too late. No. Her face became completely still. We can forget everything, she pleaded. I'll never speak to Oliver again. I don't want a life built on you, forcing yourself not to love someone else. I choose you. You chose me after I stopped choosing you. She grabbed the edge of the table. Please, I hope you recover. I hope you build a life that belongs to you. I stood, but I will not return. Lena remained on the floor with the ring box open in her hand. I walked away. Vivian's car was parked across the street. She had claimed she was only nearby because of a meeting. I did not believe her. She opened the passenger door. You stayed. You looked as though you might need a ride. You were waiting for me. I was aggressively available. I laughed for the first time that day. Vivian began visiting Margaret more often. At first, our conversations were cautious. Then they became easy. We discovered that we had both once planned to cycle across Europe. She had postponed the trip to save her family's company after her father died. I had abandoned mine because Lena's condition worsened. Vivian loved mountain trails, live jazz, and terrible roadside coffee. So did I. She invited me to a charity concert in Vancouver. The seats were in the front row. Halfway through the performance, I looked at her. Beneath the stage lights, Vivian was not checking her phone. She was not scanning the room for someone more important. She was simply there with me. After the concert, the organizers invited her to a private reception. Executives, artists, and investors gathered around her. I had known she was successful. I had not realized how powerful she was. People listened when she spoke. Doors opened when she approached. Yet every few minutes, her eyes searched the room until they found me. Lena had hidden me for 5 years because she feared what people might think. Vivian crossed a room full of influential strangers, took my hand and introduced me by name. "This is Evan," she said. "He's the reason my grandmother is healthier and far more troublesome." I smiled. Margaret would have considered that a compliment. Later, while Vivian was speaking to a donor, I slipped outside for air. Lena was standing near the terrace. 6 months had passed since the cafe. She looked composed, but painfully tired. "I heard you were here," she said. "How?" Vivian posted a photograph. I glanced through the window. Vivian had uploaded a picture of us together. She had tagged me publicly. Something so simple should not have felt revolutionary. Lena followed my gaze. "Oliver is marrying my younger sister." I looked back at her. She seemed to expect the news to hurt me. Instead, I said, "I hope they're happy." Her eyes filled with disbelief. "That's all. What else should I say? My family never considered me suitable for him. My sister is healthy, predictable, easy to present. I'm sorry. Are you? I don't wish you pain." She laughed bitterly. "Oliver was the only person who showed me kindness when I was 15. My family left me alone during Christmas because they didn't know how to handle me. He found me sitting outside a closed cafe and brought me home for dinner. I waited. He gave me a bowl of soup." She continued. "No one had noticed I was missing. He did." Her expression became distant. "I thought he was the light that saved me." The irony was almost cruel. Oliver had given her one warm meal. I had given her 5 years. Yet gratitude had turned him into a legend and me into a service she assumed would never end. Lena took a step closer. "When I finally spent time with Oliver again, all I could think about was you." I said nothing. He didn't know how I took my tea. He hated the films we watched. He became impatient when I couldn't sleep. Her voice broke. "I kept comparing him to you. That isn't Oliver's fault." "No." She looked at me through tears. "It's mine." Music drifted from the ballroom. Lena lowered her voice. "I think I loved you long before you left." "Maybe you did." Hope entered her face. "But I don't love you anymore." The hope vanished. She reached for my hand. I moved it away before she could touch me. Lena stared at the empty space between us. For 5 years, I had always reached first. Now there was nothing. Vivian appeared in the doorway. She took in the scene without accusation. "Evan, are you ready to leave?" "Yes." Lena looked at her. "You think you won?" Vivian remained calm. "This was never a competition. He loved me first, and you taught him that being loved without respect is not enough." Lena flinched. Vivian offered me her hand. I took it. Lena's breathing became uneven. A member of the event's medical team approached. When she began showing signs of a panic attack, security cleared the area. While a crisis professional contacted her family and doctor. Lena's mother arrived and immediately blamed me. "You did this to her." Vivian stepped in front of me. "No, your daughter is experiencing a health crisis and needs professional care. Evan is not her treatment plan." Victoria Ashford stared at her. "You know nothing about our family. I know you allowed him to provide unpaid care for 5 years, while all of you kept the truth from him." Victoria's face changed. She knew Vivian was right. Lena, seated nearby with a medical professional, raised her head. "Mother," she whispered. "Stop." Victoria turned. Lena's voice shook. "None of this is Evan's fault." For the first time, she accepted responsibility, without asking me to rescue her from it. I wished she had learned that sooner. Several weeks later, a large payment appeared in my bank account. The Ashford family described it as compensation for the years I had acted as Lena's primary caregiver. My friend Marcus called from New York. "You actually accepted it." Of course, I thought you might be too proud. It was 5 years of unpaid work. He laughed. That sounds healthier. It was. I used part of the money to help my parents renovate their house. I saved the rest for the journey I had postponed. After university, Vivian planned to join me for part of it. By then, we were no longer pretending our relationship was merely friendship. She invited me hiking. I taught her to cook. She attended Sunday dinner with my parents. My mother adored her. My father pretended not to, then quietly repaired a vintage bicycle for her birthday. Margaret took full credit for everything. You would still be miserable without me, she announced. That may be true. And unmarried. Vivian and I are not married. Margaret looked at me. You're wasting time. Lena entered a long-term treatment program. From what Marcus told me, she began working seriously with her doctors instead of relying on one person to regulate every part of her life. Her family also entered counseling. Oliver married Lena's younger sister. The news once might have destroyed her. Instead, she remained in treatment. That was progress. Months later, Sophie called me. She was the friend whose conversation I had overheard in the garden. Lena wants to see you once, she said. No, she isn't asking you to come back. No, she says she needs to apologize properly. She can write a letter. She already has. Then she can keep it. Sophie exhaled. I feel responsible. If I hadn't asked that question, maybe you would have married her. If you hadn't asked, I would have married a lie. But she's suffering. I'm sorry. She still calls your name when she's frightened. I looked across the deck of a small boat on Puget Sound. Vivian stood near the railing holding a fishing rod. The wind pulled strands of hair across her face. She glanced toward me and silently asked whether everything was all right. I smiled. Lena's recovery cannot depend on my return, I told Sophie. That would only recreate the same problem. So you won't visit? No. Vivian raised an eyebrow. I added, my girlfriend wouldn't like it. Her expression immediately darkened. I ended the call laughing. You made me sound jealous, she said. Are you saying you're not? I'm saying mature adults do not need to discuss every emotion. Your ears are red. They're cold. It's July. Vivian turned back toward the water. A fish pulled at her line. She caught it after a determined struggle and looked unbearably pleased with herself. I moved beside her. Vivian, yes. Do you love me? The wind seemed to stop. She stared at me. For once, the woman who could negotiate million-dollar contracts had no answer prepared. Finally, she said, mature adults do not need to state the obvious. I reached into my coat pocket. Margaret had helped me choose the ring. Naturally, she had also criticized every option. Vivian's eyes widened when I went down on one knee. You said we didn't need to state the obvious, I said. So I'll ask something less obvious. She covered her mouth. Will you marry me? Yes. The answer came before I finished breathing. Then she laughed through tears. Yes, Evan. We married 1 year after the day I returned to Seattle. Margaret stood beside my parents at the front of the ceremony, proudly informing every guest that she had personally rescued me from a disastrous romantic life. Vivian walked toward me beneath an arch covered in white roses and lavender. She looked confident until she reached the final few steps. Then I saw her hands trembling. I held them. You can still change your mind, I whispered. Absolutely not, I had to offer. You've been warned. I intend to keep you. Unlike Lena, Vivian did not mean possession. She meant partnership. We exchanged our vows. Beneath the afternoon sun, no one was hidden. No one was waiting for someone else. No one had to become sick, useful, or indispensable to earn a place beside the person they loved. Later, during the reception, my phone vibrated. A final message from Lena had arrived through. Sophie, I once thought love was protecting Oliver from my darkness. Now I understand that love was the man who stayed inside it with me. I'm sorry I only recognized you after you learned to leave. I read it once. Then I closed the message. I did not hate Lena. I hope she recovered. I hope she learned to build relationships without turning people into rescuers. But forgiveness did not require reunion. Understanding did not require surrender. And compassion did not mean abandoning the life I had finally built. Vivian appeared beside me. Everything all right? Yes. She looked toward the crowded dance floor. Your grandmother-in-law is demanding another dance. She isn't my grandmother-in-law. Tell her that yourself. Margaret was already waving us over. Vivian took my hand. I followed her into the light. For 5 years, I believed love meant sacrificing. Enough to become impossible to leave. I was wrong. Real love did not ask you to destroy yourself proving your loyalty. It did not keep you nearby as a substitute while protecting someone considered more valuable. Real love did not hide you. It saw you clearly, chose you openly, and walked beside you without requiring you to carry the entire weight of its existence. Lena once believed I would always return whenever she called. For 5 years, she was right. Then one day, I finally understood that leaving her did not mean I had failed to save her. It meant I had finally decided to save myself. Would you have forgiven Lena after learning the truth? Or would you have walked away like Evan? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow for more emotional stories about love, betrayal, and second chances. This story is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. Mental health conditions deserve compassionate, professional support and should never be used to shame or define a person.